You know, there's just so much to talk about. What a great crowd you are, by the way. Thank you all for coming out. There's so much to talk about, so many cases, that if you start to try to deal with all the details of each of the cases, you become completely overwhelmed by it all. So my job here tonight is really to try to give you the very, very big picture. And what I knew that I wasn't going to get a chance to really give a long talk, so I wrote the whole thing out on 2 pages, and if you pick up the yellow sheet, you can see what I really wanted to say to you. But what I really wanted to get across was the idea somehow of giving this process, this thing, it's like a disease that's sweeping across the country, in which innocent Muslims are locked up for crimes that they didn't commit. And we have to give it a name. And the name that I think is clear here is preemptive prosecution. What does that mean? Well, I think it starts with the Cheney 1% doctrine. You know, the idea that if there's a 1% chance that the unimaginable might happen, you have to act as if it's a certainty. So, translated into this, if there's 1% chance that some Muslim might commit a terrorist act down the road, you have to take them out. You have to get them locked up. And that is what is the motive or the impetus that is driving all of this. It is this sense that you have to preempt a terrorist act from happening by locking somebody up if there's even a 1% chance, if there's any chance at all that they might do it. How does this 1% chance get calculated? Well, at Project Salam, we've been studying this, we've been looking at these various cases, and there seem to be a number of different ways that this suspicion can arise in the mind of the government. One of the worst things you can do as a Muslim is to be generous, to give money to charity. Virtually all of the Muslim charities were immediately shut down, their leaders were prosecuted, and the government made good use of the material support for terrorism statute. In that, if you give any support to a designated terrorist organization, then you are considered to have committed a crime. The idea that you could, for example, I think in the Holy Land case is perhaps the best example of this, where they prosecuted the leaders of the Holy Land Foundation dealing with the Palestinians, and although there was no evidence, and the government conceded that the Holy Land Foundation had not helped the terrorists directly in any way, it was the very fact that by building hospitals in Palestine, they had helped to enhance the prestige of Hamas. And in that way it helped. So the idea that you help some poor person in Palestine means that you are now helping the terrorists who happen to be in de facto control of the government at that point. I mean, this is the kind of nutty thinking that the government is going through. Another way that you can become suspicious in the eyes of the government is to be associated with terrorists. Associated with somebody who's associated with a terrorist. So that, in the Hashmi case, for example, some person comes by, stays for a while, leaves a bag of clothes for a week, and then goes on his way. The clothes eventually end up with some terrorist group, and so you have helped, assisted the terrorist by allowing the bag to stay in your apartment for a week. I mean, it's this sort of thing. Again, it's the 1%. If there's any chance that this person might have helped a terrorist in some way, then they're going to go after you and try to take you out. Of course, there are the agent provocateurs, and we've heard a lot of examples of that. And then, of course, the government is engaged deeply in warrantless electronic surveillance of all kinds. And certainly from my point of view as a lawyer, I assume every conversation I have now is being monitored. And I think all of you should too. That sort of thing is now widely understood to be a problem. And then I think another thing that comes up is the problem with reports from just everyday citizen vigilantes, and I think what happened to the Fort Dix 5 and the clerk picking up the whole movie of these guys holding up some guns and shouting Allah Akbar and deciding that was terrorist, and that causes the FBI to send in a group of two agent provocateurs to take them out, to create conversation which they can then spin in such a way as to convince a jury that they are terrorists. So it's a serious disease. I think it is as John Dean at one point said, it's a cancer growing on the judiciary, it's a cancer growing on the Justice Department. And eventually something is going to have to be done about it. at Project Salam, we are sort of urging two things. One is this, if you look at the back of the other handout that we have, it is a resolution that we wanted the Albany Common Council to adopt. And part of that resolution at the very end, if you go to the end, it is asking that the Department of Justice appoint a special prosecutor to review all the cases of Muslims that were entrapped or were preemptively prosecuted. To review those cases because of all the internal memos that would have indicated that the government itself never believed that these were real crimes. I don't believe any of these prosecutors believe that these are real crimes. I think they're saying, we have been given orders from Washington to take these people out for one reason or another. We know this is fake. And I think if any honest lawyer went through those files and looked at them, they would see it was a fake, and they would throw the cases out.
You mentioned the IG report.
Yeah, well, all right. As it happened, the Attorney Inspector General at one point went through and looked at all of the secret surveillance programs. And they discovered that the secret surveillance programs were set up in such a way that there was no ability to find exculpatory information within those programs. That is to say, they were good at catching the people in things that might look bad, but they had no way of conveying to the trial court at trial, information that shows that they were not guilty. And so the Inspector General himself is saying, you need to appoint a special prosecutor to go back and review all of these cases to see whether or not, in fact, your own evidence shows that they were not guilty. So far, the Justice Department has done nothing. And we need to bring public pressure to ensure that that happens, that the Attorney General, the Inspector General's own report is made the law of the land, and that the Justice Department appoint a special prosecutor to review these cases. And then the other thing was that as we reviewed for this memo, and you'll see I took a number of quotes from the government at the press conferences. And it turned out that the press conferences were a wonderful source of information. For some reason, after the trial was over, the government loved to talk about their successes and how they preemptively prosecuted people. And it actually was very illuminating. It showed, in fact, how innocent these people really are. So if any people out there have the opportunity or the ability to get films of press conferences after the fact, I'd love to see them, and I'd like to go over them and look at for them. And so you can maybe get in touch with us and let us know if you have some. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.